Hello, my name is Charlotta. Welcome to the School of Pattern Cutting. In this tutorial I'm going to analyze a 1950s Pierre Cardin coat with a statement collar, which is much easier to draft than you might think. This is a recording of an Instagram live analysis, so why don't you join me next time? I'm live every other Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. UK time. So I've put the link to my Instagram page in the description below, and I share lots of tutorials and tips over there too. So let's have a look at the coat together. Before we do it, I do always appreciate a thumbs up if you like my video, or even better, comment below and let me know what you like me to look at next. Let's analyze this coat. So let's draw the coat without the collar first. So it's got crew neck, and the reason I'm drawing it without a collar is because I want to show you the collar separately in a minute. What I find quite fascinating and what makes this coat quite flattering, that it's got quite a wide body, but it's got some clever shaping on there, and if you've taken my vintage masterclass, you'll recognize that type of pattern cutting. And it's also got a very slim cut sleeve, which balances the oversized shape, which I like. So I'm going to leave the shoulder region empty for now, because I'm not quite sure what shape it is. And then the overall shape of the garment is something like this. So it's a trapeze shape in that it starts out flare and then it becomes square, and that really works on that fabric. And Ellie is just saying, in this oversized style, it could be made to look really modern. I agree. I think that it's quite a timeless coat, isn't it? I think, yeah, if you put it in a different fabric in black, you probably wear it at any time in the last 50 years, and definitely now. But even the check is very now. And then it's got a single pressed buttonhole, so it's just got these oversized buttons, 1, 2, I think. Of course, we can't see what's happening at the top here properly. Actually, we can see there's a button a bit higher than I have drawn it. And then, of course, at the top it's got this really big black bow ribbon I'm going to talk about in a minute, because I found another image where we can actually see what happens with this collar. So we can see the shape is flared and then straight, which can be called a trapeze shape. And then if you've done the vintage masterclass, you will recognize this beautiful trapeze shape, which is a mixture of dart manipulation and volume creation. And Yves Saint Laurent used it at Dior quite a lot. It's quite Balenciaga as well. It's very much of a period. It's always beautiful. And I can't actually tell whether it's a side seam or not. If you had, for example, a width for fabric, you could literally draft the whole coat, because I'm going to do the back quickly, because I think the back is very simple. So again, has probably just like a trapeze shape and a crew neck, and maybe a center back seam just to split your back so it doesn't look too wide and flat. It's always quite nice to have some detail. And of course you could also echo that trapeze shape at the back. But in theory, what you could do is, especially if you're a center back and center front seam, you can eliminate your side seams. So what it basically then looks like, your center front is like this with the trapeze shaping, and then your center back is like that, and then whatever shoulder you use, and then it's got the armhole in one go. So you don't have a side seam. And of course you can add one, But with styles like that, if they are that square, you can literally just, you could just use, even just have a center back on fold and just use one width for fabric, which makes it quite nice to, easy to make. But of course you can add side seams as well. It always depends what's more practical. And then if you look at the sleeve, it's quite a narrow sleeve. And now I'm going to switch to the bigger picture. And I at first didn't actually put this together with that because it looks quite differently. But once you realize this, you can see the black bow, the double collar. And then she's of course wearing a different hat, but it is the same coat, I believe. Of course I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. But this is a really fantastic close up to look at, because we can see there's actually a seam on the top here. Can you see on the sleeve? Because how the checks meet. So we basically got a seam here, which means that you either have a gusset sleeve, or so it could be either just like this with a little interesting gusset, or oh, and sorry, I'm just catching up with the comments, and Natalie says it looks the same. I agree. It's just because the black and white stands out much more on this one, but I agree, I think it's the same coat, and you can even see this looks like the gangway to the boat. But this is either a gusset sleeve or it is a raglan, and you can't really tell. But what's quite interesting, you can see that the back is actually very voluminous here. And then if you go to this one again, if you seam in where it becomes really unsharp, you can actually see this looks like there's a raglan shape. So I think there's another seam like this, which would actually be really nice. So it's like a ray of darts and seams coming from your neckline, which again accentuates the shape. It all comes out. And then the collar in a way is like a little sort of frill to frame the neckline, because at first you think, oh, it's quite it's like a one-piece shirt collar, or like a sort of Balenciaga one-piece jacket collar. But then you can see, oh, it's double and it's got all these pleats. So at first it looks sort of very complicated, and you can see if you draw it on, you can see the center front here is actually on the fold, and if you zoom into the other image you can actually see it much more clearly. And it's basically, as soon as you see this image, it becomes perfectly clear how it's made. So you can see this is the center front, which is on fold. So the center front looks like this, and then it's also got, then I'm going to go back to our image just so we can draw it how it looks. And you can see it's got these lovely gathers to give it more volume, to puff it up. And then it's basically a double collar. And then now if you look at this one, you can really see how much amazing volume there is. And so you can see this is the front, so that's the double, but then the whole thing is basically completely double layered. So what it basically is, if I get a piece of paper, and what I love about it is that it is wool, some sort of houndstooth black and white, and I think then it's probably layered with some very fluffy interlining, or with some nowadays with padding. This would make a fantastic padded coat. And sort of, you know how Montclair always do their like icons, or I think fashion series, and they get fashion designers to reinterpret Montclair, like the, you know, the feather stuffed. winter coat, Italian. And this is, can you imagine if this was a goose down stuffed coat, and when that collar was really puffy and warm, it was like sort of frame your face like a pillowcase nearly. But this is the collar. So what it basically happened is, if you got a long strip, you fold it. I'll close it for a second so we can see it on the red. You've got a long strip, and that strip would be, let me check, think about it in a second. I think that strip would be the length of your neckline plus however many gathers you want to increase. So you might do 20% more, 30% more, because here you can really see how it's gathered. So we folded it like this, and then we also know it's folded over at the center front. So I think it looks something like this. So both of our center fronts are folded. So we actually need a really long piece of fabric. So that's our center front and our center front, and then this would be our center back. And you can see there's only one seam there. And then you fold it over, and then you add whatever gathers you want. And then it becomes like this. I need to make it a bit bigger, but can you see basically all it is a strip of fabric which you then fold over and you put around your neckline, and then it opens up and it looks, have I done it the right way around? Oh yes, and then what basically happens is, in here you got an opening where it joins to the center front, so you just stitch it onto your neckline, and then you got opening at the center front where you tie it to. So all you do is you got a really long strip and you stitch it together, so you got really neat edges, and then it folds like this. So I'm gonna actually put it, I'll do a different reel just to see the steps in some fabric so you can see it. But so it's really clever how it's basically just a long scarf or a strip of fabric which wraps around your neckline. And so there's two options on how this is actually made. It's either attached to your neckline and stitched on, or you literally have a really long, oh, I just realized I did something wrong just now. I will make a story, because I think this can be either folded back or it could be a I'll show you. I think the front is either folded back completely, so it could be just like that, so fold it, and then it basically opens up like that. So I think it could be like that. So that's where your black string is, and then this is your gap here. And then, yeah, this would make more sense. So there, then you have your hole in here. Can you see? It's basically like this. And then you have your hole where your string goes through. So in theory, it could just be a separate sort of scarf shape, which you then stitch together, and then you just have your ribbon on top which holds it in place and then ties it to the coat. So the coat itself could actually be a really nice crew neck, collarless neck coat, and then you have the separate collar which you can wear on top and then style up or down, for example, which I think would be really nice. And Natalie says, I agree with the second method. Yes, I think it would make sense, because I think the first one I showed was too complicated, and what I've learned from copying quite a few Pierre Cardin styles, he's actually very clever, because all his stuff is the easiest way you do. So you never think too complicated if it's the most purest form. And in that shape, by adding the gathers, and I think the gathers are stitched in shape in place, so you basically end up with a shape like that, and then that moves up and down. I do a little sample with fabric so we can see how it works. But that is the basic shape. So basically what is really nice with something like that, you could say, oh, I'm going to draft a really basic trapeze shape or oversized coat, but then I actually add a statement collar, and or different ones. You can have different ones, bigger, smaller, more gathered. But that's a basic method where you basically just take a strip of fabric and then you fold it back on itself and then stitch it so you have a gap there, and through a gap you basically add your tie. So it's really clever. And I also love, to finish off, I love that contrast bow, because that holds it all together. And I'm not quite sure, some of you might take a guess, do you think that's a bow at the back or not? Maybe it was just too long, it's a bit weird. It might be quite a cute sort of bow tie. But what I think is lovely as well, you could make that out of fake fur, you could make it out of contrast fabric, stuffed fabric, it could be made of lots of different fabrics. And I think the gathering is, so it's either, but when you stitch this together and when you pull this together, it just pulls it together naturally and creates the volume, because it looks quite asymmetric, but I think it might be actually fixed in place. You could experiment with that. I would just make it long ways out of a strip of fabric first and then tie it together and see how it looks like. And then of course it would be quite nice if you untied it, it would be, you could actually change the length of it, how you wear it. So that's really worth experimenting this. But this is the Pierre Cardin late 1950s coat.